Alright, one of the other orders of business I got to get done today in mid-November before the snow flies, so to speak, is I've got to put away the Ariens zero-turn lawnmower. I don't want that sitting out all winter. I'm going to put that in the Alpine shed, but the thing I want to do is I want to get this leaf blower assembly. Let's see if I can disassemble that and take that into the basement and do some repairs on that so it'll be ready for the spring. That's got an issue. That started making some really bad noises. And then what I noticed was that what has happened is, I don't know if you can see it in there or not, but inside, right in here, there is a bearing and shaft that goes through. That bearing has completely failed, so this is actually unsupported on this side. There we go. Right in there, that's a train wreck, and I can't quite see what's going on with it. We'll start by taking this little guard off. Alright, by lowering the deck down to the lowest position, I should have enough clearance now in here so that I just take this big wing nut off and can take this plastic shaft, this belt guard off. Let's see if there's a mouse nest under here. Wouldn't have been surprised if there was. So that's that mess. So you can see you got two pulleys here, act as idlers. They're actually the tensioners. And then you got this pulley here, which you can see is not in line with the belt because it's actually, this whole shaft is cocked this way because of that whole bearing failure situation going on there. So what I want to do now is, well, I think if I pop this belt off, I need both hands to do it. Well, this is being kind of a pain, all because this one nut on the bottom here doesn't want to come off. All these other bolts appear to be captive somehow from the back side. I don't know if they're carriage bolts or what, but this bottom one was a little corroded. It's the only one out of all of them that looked corroded, probably because water sits down the bottom here, maybe, I don't know. But the problem is that nut turned a little bit and then stopped, and now the whole stud is turning, so I can't seem to get that one to come off. So then I tried taking these nuts off, these self-locking nuts. All that did was take this half of the two-part shell bearing carrier off, but the bearing is press fit onto this shaft. I took this little retaining screw with funky washer off. I think if I put my puller on here, I could probably pull this off. Alright, I was able to get the puller behind the bearing itself, because if I had just tried to pull on this carrier, this is just thin stamped metal, it would bend like crazy. And the irony is I wouldn't be able to pull this shaft out far enough to do this if this wasn't already broken on the back side, because that's what allowed this to move in that direction. Well, as is often the case with this time of year here in New England, it's starting to get dark, so I'm going to pull this whole assembly. What's nice about this is it actually just slides in. There's a couple of pins that slide in. They haven't been out in a while, so they're a little tight. I think I've got them worked free. Disconnect that hose, and this whole assembly, now that I have the belt off, can lift up and slide off. Phew! Well, what normally is probably a pretty easy matter of removing this turned into quite the ordeal because these pins were seized in there. So I definitely want to make sure I clean these pins up and maybe put some anti-seize compound on them when I reassemble this, so that the next time I won't have that much of a problem. What I ended up doing was I raised up the deck and then lowered the deck back down so that the weight of these brackets was basically supported by this 2x6, and then that left the weight of the deck hanging off the back there. And then I used a big pry bar and banged on the top here down. This one came out a lot easier. That back one was really seized, but I was able to break it free. So now I have this whole unit as an assembly off the tractor, and that's going to make it a lot easier to work on when I decide to get back to this. and for the time being I can take the tractor and put it away for the winter.